Hey, before you watch this, please hit the subscribe button.
All right, it's Shouty Show time. Let's get to it.
I've thought about it very deeply.
I liked how he started it with, I've thought about this long and hard.
I trust the backup quarterback more than I do Dak.
This is why Skip Bayless is the master of the Shouty Show segment.
I can't do it anymore. It is year 6.
It's just a never-ending arms race of idiocy between loud, obnoxious people. We are the antidote to that.
It was a special week last week, walking around Media Row, Radio Row, see Cam Newton, Stephen A. You just see our Shouty Show heroes walking around in person.
Yeah, absolutely. They were all over the place.
Having crossover episodes, meeting with each other. It was a big week last week.
Stephen A. on Cam Newton show was something pretty special.
Yeah. So let's get right into it. Let's go with our first one. What do we have?
I still hear people say that you and I ruined sports media.
Yeah.
That we destroyed it with our style or whatever it is.
Yeah.
That it's Screaming A. Smith and Skip Bayless, right? That's all we ever heard. Yeah. And if I may say so myself, I think we revolutionized it.
Y'all did.
I don't know their names. I know your guys' name, you know?
Right.
And the ratings would say we were pretty good.
Damn right.
And I would say that no one has ever quite matched the chemistry that maybe God above gave us. But it's just hard to find. You can't teach it, coach it. It just worked. And it was entertaining, and it was enlightening, and it was just fun. Yeah. And I think it was fun for everybody. Like Gerald grew up on it and has always told me he just never had so much fun watching something as watching us.
Right. Well, you're right. And I think that it's a lot of BS when it comes to that stuff, because you got a lot of jealousy, a lot of envy, because people look at what we've been able to achieve and they're like, why them? Why not us? But I often use the analogy, well, not necessarily an analogy, but I often say, you looking at me at First Take, where were you when I was a high school reporter for the New York Daily News? Where were you when I was covering high school sports for free?
Where did it go wrong?
So that was Skip and Stephen A. reunited on Underdog, did it, right? I didn't watch the whole thing, but I'm kind of glad I got a heads up that this was one of the takes, because I've heard Stephen A. say things like this before, where, what's his name? Dan Le Batard confronted him sort of face to face and said, look, I hate what you have done to the sports media landscape. And they push back on that a lot, and they say things like this, right? We revolutionize sports media and look at our success and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, yeah, but I was trying to think, organize my thoughts when I knew that this was coming up, to figure out just how far I wanted to push this. Like, I'm not willing to say that Stephen A. and Skip Bayless are the cause of the downfall of Western society, but they're certainly in there, right? Like, I'm not sure if they're the symptom or the disease itself, but it all comes along with one, right?
On a parallel track.
This slide.
It's coincided with.
Yeah, like this slide of humanity from, rationalism and facts and information into shouting and idiocy is, like, they are a big part of that. And again, I'm not sure if they're a symptom or the actual illness itself, but the problem is they measure they measure virtue in terms of success and ratings and money, right? Stephen A., from his point of view, has better ratings and more money than anybody else has ever done this before. Therefore, he is the best at it. Therefore, this is virtuous and this is the good thing to do. Whereas everyone else looks at this and says, you have ruined the entire sports media landscape, and that's the cost of your money and your fame and your success. Like, this is not a good net win for everybody. This is a massive net negative that's just benefited you personally tremendously. And obviously Skip thinks similarly, right? Like, we revolutionized sports media. And they say, it was fun. Everyone had fun. People didn't have fun. People hate this. People watch this of two people just shouting at each other, and whatever about the original iteration of it, those two people doing it. But now, look what it's created. Like, look what it has fostered. And the level of discourse around everywhere is so much worse. But also, it's played into this whole world where the hatred is everywhere, right? Like, people have lost the ability, because debate television existed, people have lost the ability to have a discussion, right? Because no longer. Like, now all you're presented with is arguments. I shout something, you shout the opposite, and then whoever shouts loudest or has the pithiest soundbite wins, right? Which means if anyone has a contrary opinion, or if anybody thinks something different, or if anybody wants to put a different viewpoint across, the hate, they don't get met with a rational discussion. They get met with people screaming you're an idiot and hate, right? And that's how you end up with the last sort of 3 or 4 days that I had.
So you're blaming Stephen A. and Skip for
largely
the last couple days.
Seriously, like, I genuinely think that what they did to the sports media, like I said, I don't think that I'm not sure that they're single-handedly responsible for the entire downfall of Western society, right? Like, I don't think you can, the meme with the dominoes, right? Tiny domino and then giant big domino. I don't think you can say Skip Bayless versus Stephen A. at the bottom and, like, Donald Trump's America at the top. I think that's a little bit much. But I do think that they're, like, symptomatic of the way this whole world has gone. Like, they played into something that has turbocharged this downfall of rational discussion.
The one thing that's interesting there, and it's a challenge when we're in this space, to not look at the numbers as the measure for success. That's the KPI, so to speak, right? And so they did what anyone else would do, and it's like, well, the ratings are up, people are up, demand is up for me, keep going, right? And so what I do wonder is, as I backtrack a little bit, I do wonder, did they revolutionize? Well, they changed sports media, for sure. I wonder how much just being on ESPN to start gave them the leg up. Because I went back, I was down this rabbit hole a couple weeks ago of looking at old SportsCenter type stuff, watching Dan Patrick and Dan Patrick reminiscing. And so I was watching when Dan Patrick went back to ESPN like 6 or 7 years ago, having the same conversation with his guys, basically reflecting on how he was a part of the changing landscape of sports media, which was true. Him and Olbermann were unbelievable on the Sunday night SportsCenter. Like, it was much must-watch TV. And then and Chris Berman and Dan Patrick was sitting there paying homage to Berman and Steve Levy and the guy that some of the other guys that was Tom, I can't remember his name, he passed away, Tom Mees, who tragically died in a swimming pool accident. These people that, like, laid the groundwork, and I'm watching these videos of Dan Patrick reminiscing, and then it created stars, and we all consumed sports in a different way in the 80s and into the 90s and early 2000s because of SportsCenter. And, like, that's real. Like, you go back, and that was a real game changer for how sports were consumed. You didn't have to watch all the games or, like, hope that the national game was on once a week. You could see all the highlights, and they did it in an entertaining way. And now, because Skip didn't have a ton of success leaving ESPN, I wonder how much it was just like that was the next thing that was on, right? Like, Dan Patrick and Olbermann and Stu and all these guys built up the audience for Skip and Stephen A.
Right.
And then it turned into this, like, professional wrestling, cutting promos on each other, which, to your point, has now, I've heard, WCW former top guy Eric Bischoff talk about, like, look at cable news and what that's become. It's very much the same thing, right? It's just pick a side, scream at each other, and that's the show.
So we're in danger. Like, you and I are old enough that we're in that world of, boomers thinking everything was better in the past, right? But I don't think anybody views those old SportsCenter. Like, nobody's looking at old ESPN and current ESPN and thinking, man, we look at the progress. We've really improved this thing, right? It was garbage back in the day, and now we've got this wonder that is First Take, Nobody thinks that, right? Everybody looks at the old ESPN whenever it comes up and goes, man, the good old days, This isn't just us being boomers. This is like fairly unarguable that older was better here, right? So what Skip says is true. It was a revolution. They have absolutely revolutionized sports television, just in a bad way. Like, it's ruined it. They've destroyed the thing. They've taken what was the old institution, which, to be honest, was going to need to change at some point anyway, because, a system built off highlights was going to change once everybody got the highlights on their phone, on social media, live, right? Like, you couldn't run 90s Sports Center now because everyone's already seen everything that's going to take place, right? So something had to change. And apparently what they did was capitalize on that, get lucky, whatever. But they jumped on that. They've turned it into something radically different. My contention is that the thing they've turned it into is dramatically worse than the thing that existed before. And what I think I heard somebody else talking about this before, but McAfee's interesting because he's obviously got this monster show. He's one of the 3 or 4 biggest media entities out there, but is sort of steadfastly not a journalist, right? Has no journalistic background, has no journalistic knowledge. He doesn't know anything about journalism. And so you've kind of blurred the lines now between these old journalistic institutions where everybody had come up through journalism training and understood the purpose of that. And one of the things you hear journalists say a lot is this responsibility to tell truth to power, right? They see themselves, journalists see themselves as this fourth pillar of democracy, right? Where they're the thing that shines a light on negative things. McAfee doesn't do any of that anymore because he's not a journalist. So he has people on to talk, right? Because they do ratings. And there's zero, he's effectively a propaganda arm at that point. Not deliberately, but because he just doesn't understand the role theoretically should be for that guy to push back and provide a counter argument to whoever's on there trying to use his show for propaganda. Journalists understand that and push back. McAfee doesn't, so he just has a conversation with them.
I would argue that line's been blurred too by journalists as well.
It has, absolutely. But at least
they're biased.
But the point is, of course, but at least they understand theoretically the purpose, right?
But I don't think there's any difference.
No, there is, because there's one thing to understand it and then decide when to break the line or when to break the rule occasionally. It's another thing to never even be aware that that's a thing. You become so much easier to be used. The point is that journalists used to be driven as a target by something other than ratings and money, right? Now, everything is driven by ratings and money, which is another consequence of this Stephen A. Skip Bayless dynamic where all you're doing is chasing the biggest ratings. And you believe that that's the purpose of this. The purpose with a lot of old school journalism, most of which is now basically dead, was never ratings and money in the first place. So something has been lost along this pathway in the pivot to ratings and money. And that is a big part of the Skip Bayless and Stephen A. thing as well.
Not to go too far, the whole thing's going to be off the rails, but I thought the 2000s, I used to love watching Sunday Night Baseball. And Sunday Night Baseball, just like Sunday Night Football, it's like the weekly baseball game. There was a point in the 2000s, when I was a kid, when I was a kid, things were better. When I was a kid, small market teams played on Sunday Night Baseball. It's I've never get to see the Pirates. Pirates are on this week. Never get to see the Brewers. They're on this week. There was a point where it became all Red Sox, Yankees, Dodgers.
Right.
Sunday night.
Because that's what drives the ratings.
Because there was, not that ratings and money have always mattered, but I do believe about 20 years ago, things changed a little bit more where it's we can't have a bad rating.
Right.
We can't risk putting the Pirates on Sunday Night Baseball. It has every Red Sox Yankees game has to be there, so it just gets oversaturated with it does a bigger number.
There was always a blend,
and I think that took off more 20 years ago, and then it was TV. It's crept into news, cable news. It's crept into everything.
Yeah, there used to be a blend, and it was
you have to balance it.
There was some lowest common denominator stuff that would finance effectively the stuff that journalists and other people wanted to do. And then you're right, somewhere along the way, everything gets co-opted by CEOs and, finance officers and the money people. And it's well, why are we leaving this money on the table? Why not talk about the Dallas Cowboys every segment?
I mean,
it's like,
literally,
'cause they're not in the Super Bowl, Jim. Doesn't matter. Talk about the Cowboys. That's what makes the ratings.
Literally, so just to get into the mind of where that comes from. When we were at PFF in the early days, not knowing anything about media, we just kind of stumbled into doing a podcast in 2012, but we'd have these conversations with Chris in the early days. And he would, listen to our show and say, well, you gotta lead with the Cowboys. It's not exactly that, but when we were on that draft show, which is 10 years ago now, we were on the draft show. It's like, can we we got to do a Cowboy segment. This was Chris suggesting to the producers. We had 1 hour on NBC Sports cable channel at the time. We were doing the PFF draft show. We had just gotten this new data that we were going to show off to the world. And Chris says, we have to have a Cowboys segment. And I don't remember exactly, but they're picking like 28th or whatever it was. And it's like, what? Why? Because that's what he's been trained in. I'm going to do 3 Cowboys games a year, and this is all that anybody cares about. And he was telling us, hey, we got to talk Cowboys. And then he'd listen to our podcast and say, why'd you talk about the Panthers for 20 minutes? Why'd you talk about the Browns? You got to talk about the Cowboys. You got to talk about the Eagles, because that's what people know in media now.
So this is what I'm saying. I don't think you can say that Stephen A. and Skip are entirely responsible for this downfall, but they're all part of this descending spiral where it's just become everything, all the guardrails that stopped this happening in the past have been dumped. And now it's all Shouty. It's all Cowboys, it's all the 3 things that move the needle in terms of ratings. And it's just, so now, what used to be a kind of wide variety and tapestry of sports discussion and stories is just shouting about 3 things. That's it. That's now the landscape. We've reduced actual nuance to just shouting at each other, and we've reduced the number of topics we're talking about to the 3 things that get ratings. So we've gone from this wide picture of everything that could be on to there's now 3 topics and it's just shouting.
I mentioned this before. I feel like the other tipping point was the Brett Favre retirement saga. A lot of this is anecdotal. That was the first time I remember a story getting beaten into the ground. At the top, that was when I was still watching SportsCenter, the 06, 07, 08 drama. Is he coming back? Is he not? We're sending a special reporter out there just to follow Favre and, whatever it was. That led SportsCenter every night. And then they'd go back to it, every 10 minutes into it. It's Favre update. This is what we talked about, top of the hour. They just kept going back to it. And then eventually it became Tebow. And then it became, Brady and LeBron and Cowboys and the whole thing, as producer Will says. The Fox Sports mandate was Tom Brady, LeBron, and the Cowboys every day. What does this mean for Dak Prescott's legacy? I don't know. It's week 5.
Yeah,
they're 3-1. He'll be okay. Man, but someone's watching.
A lot of people.
Is the problem. A lot of people are watching, and that's going to influence things. And look, we're not immune to chasing numbers, right? We do a mock draft every Monday, right? That's maybe we're ruining sports. We're doing a mock draft every Monday because more people watch it.
That's the thing.
We have to balance some of the low-hanging fruit. If people are into that versus we can't just do long-form Shouty Shows every week because fewer people watch it. So we have to balance that as well.
It's extremely hard to swim against this tide because it is where the money it is where the money is. It is where the people are. So you have to treat it, I think, the way we were talking about old school journalism theoretically treating it, which is, look, there's some stuff you have to do because that's where the money and the people are, and then that gives you the ability and the freedom and the capacity to do the other stuff that not many people are going to watch, right? So we do shows all the time where it's this isn't going to do numbers, but I think it's an interesting conversation or an interesting topic or an interesting thing. But you also have to put, if you're going to do one of those, you need to have a mock draft in there somewhere because that's what people are going to watch.
And by the way, the mock draft, I enjoy it because I feel like we do it differently and talk through things differently or whatever. I mean, but we got to go where what the people want as well.
November before Thanksgiving in 2017, and I walked in there in the off season and did an hour show with the freaking heat, sick as a freaking dog, and then walked in here and did a monologue, and I said I can't take it. I'm so sick I gotta leave. And I took the train home. And 3 days later, I was in the freaking Stanford hospital, and the doctor said, how the hell did you survive this? And then I sat there on a Tuesday night. He sat there and operated on me for 3 hours to get an appendix out. A ruptured one. Chris Russo. And Jared Jackson can't play in the fourth quarter in a game in February, making $50 million a year. I mean, this is absurd.
It's legendary stuff from Mad Dog.
I just don't understand how he doesn't blow a blood vessel doing that. Like, how?
This was legendary. This is in the Shouty Show Hall of Fame. It has all the elements, Sam. It has all the elements. You have the overpaid player opting out or load managing or whatever. You have the overpaid player who's dealing with something, right? You have the host comparing it to himself, saying, I did 1 hour show, high heat. Then I did my monologue, and I ruptured appendix.
Yeah.
Got appendicitis. I'm on my deathbed, playing through it. This is
Fighting hurt.
Shouty Show Hall of Fame. Reminds me of my flu game.
Of course.
2024 NFL draft. I played through it.
Yeah.
I had strep that had me laid out for 2 days.
The draft. You don't actually need to do anything in the draft, particularly if you're not going to get drafted.
2 years ago, the NFL draft coverage.
Oh, you got roided up. I think a lot of people.
Steroids.
I don't think that's available to
I got roided up midday and was ready to go.
I don't think the NBA people can do that.
But I played through it.
Yeah.
I wasn't load man. We went 7 hours live and then 2 hours live after that. Steroids helped.
I reference the West Wing a lot, but there's a scene in that where they start talking about like basically what stress and high blood pressure does to your body, and it just shreds every part of you. Mad Dog's like opting into that daily. How is he not, popped something already? Like a ventricle just.
He stayed at our hotel. He was staying at our hotel.
That's true. He is very chill outside of the shouting.
We saw him in and around the lobby, all over the place. Didn't talk to him.
Very relaxed.
We're bad in those situations. We could be way more bold. Be like, hey, thanks for the content. We missed opportunities.
Yeah.
But we saw him just, walking around, perfectly calm.
That's true. Maybe it's just a percentage thing. Like he's completely laid back and chill every moment he's not on a microphone, and that somehow evens out. It's like it's like a high intensity interval training.
He knows how to jack it up when
you only need to be like doing exercise for like 4 minutes as long as you do it hard enough. Maybe Mad Dog, it's like that's just 4 minutes and then he's out, and the rest of the day is just like 30 beat per minute resting heart rate. Maybe that's what it is.
That is Hall of Fame Shouty Show though. Only Mad Dog.
It blows my mind that anyone can get. I can't imagine a world where you can do that to yourself on a daily basis. Like
All right, let's go back to Skip, who believes in the Raiders next year.
I'm looking quickly at the Raiders are second in cap space. And if they have Mendoza and Genty and Bowers and second most cap space, wow, I think they're going to make some noise next year.
Oh,
I do.
Oh, me too.
And the L.A. Chargers, speaking of Jim Harbaugh, have the fourth most cap space. And they got Mike McDaniel calling their plays and maybe trying to turn around Justin Herbert a little bit in his career and try to get him over the top. I think they're going to be really good and a threat. But if you ask me my Super Bowl teams, I'm just going to go gut feeling, like bolt out of the blue, so to speak. I'm going to go Bears-Bills.
I should play Bears. You're right with the Bears. If I'm going my gut feeling,
okay.
I like the Bears.
I like
I'm
the
going
Bears Broncos. That's
This is why I will put this in. He's got the Bears in the Super Bowl. Skip.
Let's go to Skip Bayless, who believes in the Raiders next year, is just a phenomenal line.
You're dying laughing.
Given that they're
the
number one overall pick. I mean, that's peak Skip Bayless right there.
Mendoza.
I don't even need to hear the clip.
That's not a wild take.
That part's amazing.
It's not a wild take that they turn it around.
I mean, by that
we
logic,
had a 4-win Patriots team go to the Super Bowl. We had a
right, but by that logic, you can just pick any number one overall picking team. They're getting a new quarterback. They're getting a new coach probably because most teams don't retain the coach that takes them to the number one overall pick. Therefore, they're going to be great next year.
Oh, my gosh. This next one is Chris Canty. And I'll just say that the headline in our show notes here, the team that Russell Wilson built.
So this actually, I listened to this. Let's throw it on.
So what's the storyline we need to pay attention to more?
Russell Wilson took a Super Bowl away from the Seattle Seahawks when they played the New England Patriots in Super Bowl 49. He's going to give one back to them if Seattle wins Super Bowl 60. This team is the house that Russell Wilson built. The Russell Wilson trade, avoiding paying him the $245 million contract, getting multiple first-round picks, multiple second-round picks that turn into your starting left tackle, your best corner, and 2 key contributors in your defensive front seven. This is the team that Russell Wilson built. This is the championship that Russell Wilson built. And the irony of that is they're anchoring on a journeyman quarterback now in Sam Darnold, being able to have a renaissance year and get this team to the point where they can actually contend and win a championship. So that's the storyline to me that's not being talked about enough. The foundation of the Seattle Seahawks team, which was built off of the Russell Wilson trade.
I like that. The potential championship team that Russ built. That's a good one, CC.
This was a good example of, I saw the caption, and because it was attached to Chris Canty, I
thought it was going to be absurd.
I assumed that was 100% accurate, and that's exactly the argument that he was making.
Completely coherent.
Right, and because Chris Canty's done stuff, he's got some takes that would align perfectly with that, and I'm like, oh man, even for him, this is pretty rough. But I was like, no, I'm going to listen to the clip just to make sure he's actually as crazy as they're making it seem like he is. And that's a perfectly reasonable, nuanced take that actually is 100% accurate. Now, it's a little bit unclear how much credit he's giving Russell Wilson for that. I mean,
no, he's not.
Right, but it's ambiguous, right?
He's trying to say the Seahawks move to get rid
which
of
is
Russell
100%
Wilson
true.
is what got them here.
It's absolutely true. Like this whole John Schneider credit pie that he's eating right now, like it kind of starts with the Russell Wilson thing. They decided now's the time to move on from him. You know, gone is the era of let Russ cook. Actually, we're going to ship him off now. We're going to cash in. We're going to avoid the contract. We're going to go in a different direction. And they made it work with Geno for a couple of years. That was really good. Now they pivoted away from Geno and gone to Darnold. But the starting point is getting rid of Russell Wilson and, you know, living through the job you have to do to shift on from a very good quarterback and find the next answer. And they did a great job of that. So this is a really good take that I think he was kind of done dirty by the caption.
He was. In our own document here.
On the tweet as well. The tweet was basically the same thing.
So really quick, I want to go – we have time. If you go back to the NFL, we've brought this up before, but in remember the 2021 game happens, the divisional round, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, it's the cyborg game, and everybody's like, you need one of these guys. You need one of them. It's the only way to win in the NFL. This is 2021. And then around 2022, we start hearing about Aaron Rodgers trade rumors. Remember, he was supposed to go to the Broncos. They were interested. Russell Wilson gets traded. Deshaun Watson gets traded. So in that time period, all three guys were acknowledged as top 8 type of quarterbacks, right? Even Rodgers on the descent a little bit, or coming off of MVP in 21 and descending in 22 and gets traded. Russell Wilson coming off of his best year in 2019 and 20, and then maybe declines a touch, but he's still seen as very good. And then Deshaun Watson, right? He's got all of the off-field issues, but you'd say, however, on the field, this guy was very, very good, right? Top 8 type of quarterback. And all three moves failed for the trading teams. Just an interesting time period in the NFL. The other thing that had just happened is Matthew Stafford got traded for in 2021, where the Rams said, Jared Goff's not good enough. We need to get better. We're going to go to Matthew Stafford. And it worked. It worked for a year. Mm-hmm. And so between the Stafford thing, the Allen Mahomes game, it was almost like this is QB or bust. You got to go high-end QB or bust. And 3 teams made that move, the Browns, the Broncos, the Jets. It did not work for any of them. And then ironically, the team that got the haul for Russell Wilson 3 years later is winning the Super Bowl with a not-so-perceived top 5 quarterback, top 8 quarterback, wherever you want to rank Sam Darnold, which I'm sure in our next clip, Ryan Clark and Dan Orlovsky are going to tell us where Sam Darnold should properly rank.
How many quarterbacks, now that Sam Darnold has won a Super Bowl, would you take over Sam Darnold?
In the NFC, how many quarterbacks I take? I take 8. I take Stafford, Hurts, Purdy, Mayfield, Love, Goff. They all win a Super Bowl with this Seattle Seahawks team right now. I take Williams. I take Daniels. Williams and Daniels, more upside than Sam Darnold. Listen, look, put the camera on me. All 8 of these quarterbacks, if the starting quarterback for the Seattle Seahawks, they win the Super Bowl, And most of these quarterbacks, if they're the starting quarterback for the Seattle Seahawks, they beat the New England Patriots worse than they won with Sam Darnold.
The only quarterback right now, that I would take over him is Stafford. Right now. What else does Sam Darnold have to do? He's 31-7 in the last 2 years. Look at what happened to Minnesota without him. If we don't look at anything Sam Darnold accomplishes, and we just look at what happened to Minnesota as Sam has left, they've fallen apart. You're telling me that you're taking, and I love him, Jared over him?
Yes.
Or do you sit there and say 6 in one hand, half dozen in the other?
I'm taking Jared Goff over Sam Darnold.
Baker?
Yes. Hell yeah, Baker Mayfield.
They're the same guy. They're the same players.
They're not the same players.
Wow. Everything about that was pretty wild. Number one, Ryan Clark listed 8 players that he would take over Sam Darnold, and none of them were like Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, Patrick Mahomes.
Maybe that was 8.
Are they like included in?
I assume that's.
Because he was just naming, like, if you're going to name, okay, 8 players might be a reasonable place to start. I'm not sure it is. I haven't done the exercise, but I don't understand how you can name 8 and not have any of those guys. Is he like, I don't understand that.
Going back to the beginning of the show over an hour ago, this is all Skip and Stephen A's fault.
Yes.
The fact that you have to wake up on a Monday morning and you have to rank Sam Darnold. You have to rank him right now.
Right.
And then the argument is, would they have won by more points with another quarterback?
Right. Now look, but also, I mean, if he's not including those quarterbacks in his list, right? And there's no indication that he is based off that clip.
He is.
Then both sides of that argument are crazy, which again is a Skip Bayless, Stephen A. Smith thing.
I'm assuming the context is like the big 4 are off limits.
I mean, maybe. Anyway, if that's the case, then both sides of it are crazy, which again is a Stephen A. Skipification of the world. It's like, let's take not just 2 opposing arguments, but 2 extreme arguments that don't make any sense, and let's compare them. Now look, Dano, we're buddies now because he slid into my DMs. So I was like, keep your chin up. You know, this happens to the best of us.
That's nice of Dan.
So I like Dan more than I did a couple of days ago. But to say that the only quarterback you would take over Sam Darnold right now is Matthew Stafford.
Dan did this
straight up crazy.
He did that last year with Hurts, right? Didn't he?
Particularly,
he's like, Jalen Hurts is the winner. Like whoever wins,
even if
it's like they have the world title. To be the man, you got to beat the man.
But then you can't have Stafford above him. Like that's
his buddy.
Even if Darnold had played like out of his mind good, been the MVP.
If you think you were Kermit sipping tea, victory lapping.
Okay, it's NFC quarterbacks apparently. So that's like
okay, NFC quarterback. If you think you were Kermit sipping tea, victory lapping Sunday night and Monday morning, Dan was lapping you.
Oh, yeah, he was.
Dan was lapping you. He's like, my MVP vote is completely justified.
Yeah.
And he's got the Seahawks A/B analysis that you don't have. You don't have Herbert ripping apart this Seahawks defense. He's got his MVP, his buddy Matthew Stafford, tore apart the Seahawks defense twice in the last month of the season. And so he was he's paid to be right more than everyone else.
I'm paid to be right. Well, actually, okay, so this becomes more interesting now. If it's just NFC quarterbacks, given that how many of those ones are in the AFC at the moment, right? So now it's, would you take Sam Darnold over?
Definitely not Baker at this point.
Baker, Dak Prescott, Jordan Love.
I think Dak and Love have a case.
Hurts. Because I think it's a lot closer, actually, to
Purdy
Dano.
has a case.
So it's a lot closer to Dano than it is, I think, Ryan Clark, if you're limiting it to NFC quarterbacks.
Oh, this is going to be bad here. Like, Purdy has a case, again, because the whole point is, like, what if Darnold had to go up against the Seahawks defense? What if Purdy got to go up against the Niners defense, right? That's part of this whole thing.
But also, like,
what would
Darnold look like within that 49ers offense?
I'll just say, for Sam Darnold, we see this a lot. I am, in my old age, I believe QB wins are directionally getting you there over time. Not in a small sample size, not in a one-season sample. But if you are a QB, your QBs dictate wins more than any other position. We all agree on that in football. But if you're a QB win believer, this was your Super Bowl. You could say, look, Sam Darnold, 14-game winner in Minnesota, goes to Seattle, brings his 14 wins there, leads them to a Super Bowl across multiple systems. It wasn't like he was dragged. Did he have a great defense in Seattle? Absolutely. It's not like he didn't have 12 touchdowns and 8 picks or anything. He didn't have a Trent Dilfer stat line throughout the playoffs or throughout the regular season. Like, he had really good numbers, and you would make that argument, right?
I mean, I don't think you even need to reduce it to the wins. If you just say, okay, in the last 2 years total, if you just stacked up
He's been outstanding for over a 2-year period outside of a couple games.
If you just stacked up his stats and grades and stuff, what would it look like over the last 2 years? There's not going to be many people ahead of him at that point.
I agree.
So, I mean, like I said, I think it's a closer conversation because you're restricting it to the NFC and you're taking away most of the elite quarterbacks by doing that. It does make it a much more interesting conversation. Like, in the NFC, Stafford would have a better grade over 2 years. Purdy would probably have a better grade over 2 years. Jordan Love maybe, but then he'd be like next guy up. So it's pretty close to what Dano's saying.
He's played really well the last 2 years. But you're just talking about the NFC, so he's the king. And
right.
Besides Stafford. It's not too bad. That's it for Shouty Shows.
Thanks for watching all the way to the end of the video.
Check the Mic is live Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday, so be sure to hit subscribe so you don't miss a video.
You heard the man. Subscribe.